Serious, what is the creepiest or most unexplained thing that's happened to you that you still think about to this day? Maybe around age 14, early 90s. We were traveling from TX up to Tacoma, WA. We were about out of money, almost out of gas, no food, stuck in Chico, California. I sat in the car while mom took my younger sisters to the restroom at a gas station. I was riddled with anxiety about our situation and looking down. The car door opened and I looked up. A lady that looked like a brown-haired Brady mom sat in the seat and faced me. She said, "It seems like you're down on your luck. Take this and give it to your mom. Tell her to pay it forward someday to someone who needs it." I looked down into my hand and there was a $100 bill. I looked up and she had disappeared. Nowhere in the parking lot. Just vanished. I cried. When mom came back I told her what happened and she cried. We got gas. There was a guy selling oranges on the side of the road and we bought a bag and went to a local park that had a part of the river with a little spillway dam and went swimming and ate oranges for a couple of hours before getting back on the road. I never saw the lady again, but she saved us and we did make it up to Tacoma to start our new life. Thank you, stranger lady with invisible powers. We never forgot your kindness. I had a recurring nightmare of a pitch black parasite sucking the life out of me. Sometimes it waited for me in dark corners to go to bed. My cats always slept on my bed during that time. For me it was a very stressful time. I got an itch at the place of my chest where I dreamed the parasite was sucking my life out of me. I got sick and felt a pea-sized lump. I went to my doc and they ordered a biopsy of that lump. As it turned out I had male breast cancer at the age of 28. After I got well again the dream never came back and my cats slept in their places again and not on my bed. The dream was creepy enough. What it made for me were my cats protecting me. Was camping alone in a small one-person tent. All snug and secure in the tent. I went to sleep. Was woken by a clap of thunder at 3 AM. To discover both the inner and outer tent door was wide open. That was freaky. I fell asleep on the couch and got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. Once I got there I realized I didn't have to go. I headed towards the bedroom but decided to turn around and go back downstairs to the couch. When I got there I saw my body still asleep curled up on the sofa. I don't remember what happened after, and I know it had to have just been a dream. But it still freaks me out to this day to think about it. When I was 17 I had just gotten off my shift at Wendy's and was sitting in the parlor for my ride and a middle-aged man approached me about a job offer. He asked me questions about my job and Wendy's, then he told me about the job he was offering. He said there were other girls and they all lived in like a dorm and the job came with benefits. It was an office setting and other things I don't remember, but the entire time every danger bell in my body was going off full blast. It felt like my body became a vibrator. I don't remember if after the multiple rejections from me he left or if my ride had come and I zoomed out of there. The only thing I can think to this day is, did I almost get sex trafficked? Edit. I was living in Boston. I woke up at 3 AM or so by my cat jumping up on my bed and curling in between my calf muscles and going to sleep. My cat would do this every night since I was 5 years old. That was his spot. It was something I was very familiar with. Thing is, my cat was living with my parents on the West Coast, so I couldn't understand what the hell I just felt. But I knew it was my cat. I just figured I was dreaming. Got a call from my parents the following morning that my cat died around midnight the previous night. 3 hours behind since I was on the East Coast. Guess that was my cat traveling to Boston to come see me one last time. Edit. After so many replies, I got to say this. Really, I wasn't dreaming. I remember it quite well. I said maybe I was dreaming because I am doubtful myself. But thinking back, yeah, I was wide awake and realized my experience. Despite being a fun believer in ghosts, suspension of disbelief, I haven't had any other experiences other than this. This is my own experience and I expect and appreciate the doubt. But call it what you will. In college I was roommates with my childhood best friend for about 2 years. We are very trusting with each other. We would go into each other's rooms freely and grab whatever we needed. To borrow clothes, hairbrush, perfume, etc. No questions asked, just a knock if we were in the room to let each other know we were going in. Our rooms are across the hall from each other, with the hall facing the kitchen. So from the kitchen you could see down the hall where our rooms were. At the time my friend had very long black hair and she's very fair skinned. One day, I get home from work, with my headphones in my ear talking to my mom about my day. I go in the kitchen and grab a snack. I see her walk out of her room and go into mine, leave my room and go back into hers. She looked like she just got out the shower. Her hair was soaking wet and she was wrapped in a white towel. Her long black wet hair is what I distinctly remember. Also, she made no eye contact with me, but I didn't think it was weird. I didn't say anything to her since borrowing each other's stuff was normal. I'm still on the phone with my mom, so I don't think much of it. I grab my snack, hang up with my mom and go into my room to watch TV. I figured she's getting ready to go somewhere and we'll talk later. About an hour passes and I go to the kitchen to clean the plate I ate on. I see her in the kitchen making something to eat and I tell her, "Hey, what did you grab from my room earlier? Did you find what you needed?" She looks at me like if I was crazy and says, "What are you talking about?" So I say, "Yeah, earlier when I got home I saw you go into my room and grab something. Did you get what you needed?" Sorry I didn't say hi, I was on the phone with my mom. She asks me if I'm sure I saw her. I said yes 100%. She tells me to grab my phone and go to her car ASAP. That she needs to show me something. I had my phone on me and she grabbed my keys from the kitchen counter along with her purse and she drags me out the front door and into her car. She then tells me she got home maybe 5 minutes before we started talking. She had spent the night at her boyfriend's and hadn't been home all day. So she has no idea who I saw. I'll never forget the look on her face when she told me this. Complete fear and panic. She called the cops and they came along with the apartment manager. They checked the whole apartment and found no one. Nothing amiss. And they were in there a while checking every nook and cranny. The manager got maintenance to change our locks and gave us new keys a day. My friend then tells me that for a week she'd been hearing noises from her bathroom like bottles moving. And when she went to check she found nothing. I have no idea who I saw going in and out of our rooms. But it looked exactly like my friend. I don't drink or do drugs. Not on meds. This was in 2014 and I still freak out when I think about it. Once I was hired to load firewood into my aunt's basement. She lives alone and left the basement door open for me while she went out. I usually swing the interior basement door as wide as I can when I walk in and the door almost never closes completely, but once I heard it close and when I was about to grab another load I saw that the deadbolt locked. When I walk in my arms are filled with firewood so I wouldn't be able to lock it myself. Looked out the window and checked the garage to see if she came home but she wasn't there. The door itself was enclosed so no wind to shut it. I tried various ways of slamming the door so it would lock by itself but nothing worked. It's an isolated house so I would have heard someone drive up and it's highly unlikely someone walked over just to lock the door and leave in time while I was piling up firewood, and there's wooden steps so I would have heard someone walking down them. It's the only time I've seen a deadbolt lock itself in my life. I once caught my neighbor staring at me outside my bedroom window while I was straightening my hair with no trousers on. And I immediately ducked under my window pane as soon as I saw him. He was legit stood in this alleyway that connects the street's back gardens, arms crossed and there for at least 15 more minutes just staring through my window. I even got a picture of it. Pretty sure I was 15. I once woke up in a tent in the middle of the night while camping in the Upper Peninsula with my friends. I heard this dude shouting and screaming about a bear, telling it to FCK off and stuff. Naturally I woke my buddy up and told him what was up and he said he could hear it too. We got out of our tent and searched for almost an hour around the campsite and found nothing. Then proceeded to find a Red Wings hat that was neither of ours. We took watch turns the rest of the night, and I'm pretty sure he still has the hat to this day. Note, up is a term used by people familiar with Michigan as the Upper Peninsula, the arrow looking thing above the mitten. Just a normal Saturday night. I was watching TV home alone with my 2 dogs when I heard a banging sound coming from the basement. Legit sounded like somebody was just banging something on the appliances we had down there. Now there is no access into the basement from down there, only through the upstairs rooms that I was in and knew nobody could have come in and got past me. So with this knowledge I was not as scared as you may think. More curious as to what the heck the noise was. One of the two dogs, who is a meathead and wants to fight everybody, also heard the noise and was now bolting down into the basement to investigate. I get down and see that it is my other dog, banging his head into our dryer and chest freezer, which are next to each other. My meathead dog is just stood there watching, confused. So I approach my other dog and calm him down, and we all go back upstairs. Now this freaked the heck out of me and upset me, as it seems such very strange behavior for my dog to do. Fast forward only 30 minutes or so. The banging starts again. I instantly look over to my dog, but he is laid down. But now also aware of the noise downstairs. We run down into the basement and it is Meathead now banging his head in between the appliances. Again. I now calm Meathead down and we all go back upstairs. Nothing has ever happened again since that night. 3 years now, so that ruled out brain tumors, which is what I read online about why maybe dogs bang their heads, but 2 dogs suddenly on the same night, and it only affecting one of them at any given time. 3 years and the 3 of us never talk about that night, lol. Edit. Wow, thanks for all the awards and updates. To answer a few questions. Yes, I have posted this story before. I have a very normal life and this story is just way out there, but legit truthful to my otherwise mundane life. A few folks say it may have been a rodent treat toy they were after. No, they were frenzied and hyperventilating. And they get things stuck under anything, they just cry and get me to get their stuff. I guess it boils down to just knowing your dogs. I know instantly from their body language just what the deal is, but that night, I have never seen them so frenzied and upset. Also, it is otherwise a very nice basement. As basements go, I have never had a pest problem down there or in any other part of the house. Somebody mentioned that if it only happened 3 years ago, why did I not make a video of it? My first instinct was to help my dogs to stop them harming themselves. At no point was my first thought to go and grab my phone to capture the moments on film. Really surprised I have to mention that one dart, but people keyboards warriors. I've shared this before, but it still confuses the hell out of my family. Edit. This happened last year. I copy and pasted it from my original post. The beginning of the story says last night, but this was almost a year ago. We moved out of that house about 6 months after this happened. Full stop. Full stop. My husband recently took an overnight job to help us out during COVID. He's only been there about 2 weeks and works evenings overnights. 9 PM to 6 AM. Last night was no different. He left home around 8:15 PM. Our daughter, age 11, and I decided to make it a movie night. Around 11 PM. I heard keys in my back door and the usual sounds my husband makes when he comes home. I creep out to the kitchen to make sure it was him. And it was. He told me he needed to grab his knee compression sleeve, walks down the hall, says hi to our daughter as he passes the living room, and goes upstairs. He came back down, gave me a kiss and left again. We finished our movie and went to bed. In the morning when he got home, I made a joking comment about him forgetting his knee sleeve. He was genuinely confused, as I recalled the previous night. Our daughter confirmed everything I said and he still was acting confused. I pulled up our security motion camera on my phone to show him when he popped in quick, but there was no footage from the night before, or any other night, of him coming home after he's left for work. My daughter and I both heard him, saw him, and I touched him, but he was never home during that time. Nothing else out of the ordinary happened that night. We seriously have no idea what happened. Edit. To clarify, there is footage of that night, but it doesn't show him coming home at that time. The camera was on the back porch, not inside the house. We had 2 carbon monoxide detectors, one on each floor of the house. We moved out a few months later for unrelated reasons. I apologize for grammar of spelling mistakes. There was a kid in another class at my school in 6th grade that was genius. I don't mean like, oh he's really smart course doesn't need to do the homework and still gets a 100s. Like he was doing advanced calculus with a local college professor after school. This kid was smarter than everyone. So one day our computer system for the entire school goes down. I was in a poorer area at the time, so this was normal. This was occurred many times, so normally it would affect us cause we barely use laptops and such. The only class that was affected was the computer class. This kid was in the computer class. 3 or so hours later when I'm class with him during social studies. 3 guys with FBI jackets on and our local chief escorted him out of the building. We were told nothing. The parents were told nothing. It never hit the news. To this day we have no clue what he did. Except every single teacher I've asked about this says they were also told nothing. I haven't seen the kid since and I can't find a trace of him going to any other school or ending up in trouble. He just fell off the face of the earth with his parents. Yeah, I forgot to mention that parents also disappeared and no one really looked for them after a month or so. I still think about that kid. My nana, great grandma, and mum were very close but lived overseas from one another my whole life. They talked on the phone every Sunday, but because it was an international call, it was extremely expensive, so they took turns calling every Sunday at 8 AM to make the cost equal. However, due to a 4-minute difference in clocks, Nana always ended up calling at 8:04. Also, the caller ID never showed up. Mum called on a Sunday, Nana died on a Tuesday. The following week, we're sitting at the table eating breakfast, and Mum notices at 7:50 AM. Nana would have been calling any minute. She gets emotional. I comfort her. Then at 8:04 AM the mother ducking phone rings. The called ID reads unknown caller. We look at each other like, what is this, some sort of sick joke? She answers, so there's nothing but static at the other line, and some garbled voice recording. The only decipherable words in it are, we hope you enjoy your trip to paradise. Click. Phone cuts off. Absolutely no explanation for that one. Still baffles me to this day. Edit. I've been wanting to tell this story for years now, but every time I find a creepy inexplicable thread it gets buried. So glad people are finally hearing this one, lol. Some have said maybe someone was playing an elaborate prank, but I'd prefer to see it as Nana sending us one last hurrah. She really loved my mum and I a lot, as we did her too. She was a really kooky lady and this ending was extremely fitting of her. I woke up in the bath at a very specific time, like 5.45, twice, 10 years in between. Water was getting cold. I was naked. No memory of getting there. Some fragments of like seeing my own hand turning on the tap. No drugs or alcohol or even medication involved. The worst thing was the fear. When I woke up I felt an inexplicable, almost primordial dread. Lasted for hours. I was shaking. Couldn't function. Still freaks me out thinking about it. Might have been 3 times, I can't remember properly. I still get the shakes from the memory. Edit to add, oh gosh you guys. Thank you so much for the awards. My first. Right after quarantine started I got a package in the mail. It was addressed to my name and my address and contained one pink starburst and nothing else. To this day, I have no idea who sent it or why. The return address was a vacant office space across the country. Edit. I did not eat it. The postmark matched the address I believe, but it's been so long I'm not positive. There is one friend I'm thinking could have done it, but she has since passed away. It was not sent from overseas. It uses my full name, which I don't go by for anything except legal documents. I have a nickname I use almost exclusively. We had only been in this house for 8 months before I got this and we don't really know our neighbors. And my Amazon account is under my husband's information. And thank you for the awards. I was about 10 when this took place. I'm in my early 30s now. I remember it was well into late night hours when I saw my grandmother was standing at the front screen door looking outside. She was talking to someone. I saw she was talking to my dad. I couldn't see my dad's face cause he was facing away from her. He was shirtless. He had a very large distinct mole in the middle of his back. So I knew it was him. He was mumbling something I couldn't understand. My grandmother was telling him something along the lines of, if you love them so much why did you go and do this? My mom wasn't there with us to see this. She had left moments before after she got a call letting us know my dad had been driving drunk and hit a mule on the highway. My dad was in the hospital hanging on to life. Edit. Added age and approximate time. I was deployed to Iraq and we stayed in a former prison in Baghdad. During the nights we would see and hear strange things. The base at this time only had soldiers, but we would hear children playing from inside the prison. One day we decided to dig deeper to see where the kids were. When we finally found where the noise was coming from, we found a room with the ceiling caved in. We didn't find any kids but found kids' books, toys and kids' clothes. Everything looked like it wasn't moved in weeks. We continued to hear the kids in the year we spent there. I've shared this before, but I still think it's an interesting story. I was exploring the area behind my house shortly after we moved in. The area back there had once been a small quarry that had since filled with water. It was a pit of pond that supposedly went straight down 60 feet if you stepped into it. I was walking along the edge and I came across a backpack filled with old video game cartridges and a set of clothing just laying on the ground. They were for the N64 and we found this around 2004, so they were outdated. Next to it was a set of clothing. The clothes were laying on the ground, spread out, pants and shirt, so it looked like someone laying down. They looked like they'd been there a long time. Same with the backpack. I told my parents and they called the cops. There had been no reports of missing children or anything in the area. We never got an explanation, but it was weird. Just to answer some questions. I don't think it was a prank. While we were new to the neighborhood, we were renters. Also, most of our neighbors were elderly. This happened in a rural Virginia town and I can't imagine anyone wasting cartridges like that since most kids were lucky to have an N64. No people, adult or child, had been reported by families or the neighborhood as missing for years. They never searched the quarry because they never had any reason to think there was something wrong. My sister and I went out there every day for a year or so and just avoided that spot because I was creepy. As far as I know, they're still out there. I was driving home from work on a long, somewhat dark road. I'll admit I was tired and cold and just wanted to get home. Speed limit was 60 miles per hour and I was doing closer to 70. Suddenly, a girl with long blonde hair, a black coat with brown fur on the hood and jeans just showed up in front of my car. I knew there was another car to my left up ahead, but it was black and all I saw was that it was stopped before I saw her. I managed to maneuver around her. I was freaked out. I turned to a side street and stopped to figure out what was happening. Then a tall guy with a black coat and short hair gets out of the driver's side of the stopped car, grabbed her, dragged her to the car while she was fighting him, and put her back in the car. I called the police and gave them the description of the car and the direction it took off in. I never heard anything about it, and I have not stopped thinking about her since. It's been 2 years. Just in case anyone is curious or could even know something. The location was Lincoln, RI, US, next to the high school. Jan-Feb 2019. The car was a new black sports, maybe, car with the tail light going all the way across the back of the car. George Washington Highway. My girlfriend and I are in a long distance relationship. We typically take turns traveling between each other's countries, Australia and Canada. About 2 years ago, it was my turn to travel over to Australia to stay with her and her mom. For a bit of background, my GF's room was built as an extension add-on to their garage. So to get to it, you had to walk through their garage to get to her room. About a couple weeks into my trip over there, I wake up at around 1 AM and the room is just glowing red. I look up at the ceiling and I see this black figure crawling through the ceiling. It moved in such an inhuman way, almost like it was breaking every one of its bones to move. I start screaming, which wakes my GF up, and she looks up at the ceiling and starts to scream as well. Instinctively, I grab my pillow and whip it at the figure. The next thing I know, everything went black and I'm waking up a few hours later. My GF is fast asleep, so I think it was just some weird dream. At that point, I have to go to the washroom. So, I walk through the garage and try to quietly open the garage door to get into the main house. Previously, her mom had mentioned that she was getting annoyed with us staying up late at night and going through the garage door to use the washroom. Since her mom's room was down the garage door hallway, each time we would open it, the door would click loudly and wake her up. So, I'm standing there at the garage door and I try to open it as quietly as possible. As I turn the handle and the door clicks as I push it open, her mom just starts screaming at the top of her lungs. I thought it was out of rage for waking her up, so I immediately close the door and speed walk back to my GF's room. I climb into bed and gently nudge her awake to tell her that her mom is screaming. She gets up and goes to see whether her mom was still angry and try to de-escalate the situation. About 20 minutes goes by and my GF comes back into the room completely silent. She asks me if I saw the room glowing red earlier as well as a figure in the ceiling. I say yes and she goes wide-eyed and says that she thought it was just a dream too. She then says that her mom wasn't screaming at me. Apparently, when I opened the door, It did wake her up some, but when she woke up, there was a black figure standing at the foot of her bed and it was slowly moving towards her. She then experienced a blackout as well and was woken up by my GF checking in on her. Yeah. The entire house slept with the lights on for a month after that. Edit. Thank you for the awards, kind strangers, as well as the emotional support. When I was in high school, I would always be the first to arrive home out of my family, having the entire house to myself. I've never been superstitious or someone who's scared easily, and the hour I had alone was my favorite time of the entire day. My bedroom is upstairs, and one day when I got home from school I placed my bag away and started up the stairs. About halfway I stopped because I thought I heard something coming from upstairs, so I stayed and listened. I heard a very slow rendition of the melody from Ring Around the Rosie, crystal clear, coming from my bedroom. I was 100% sure I was the only one home, and I had absolutely no device that could be playing music unprompted, especially Ring Around the Rosie. I froze in fear and listened for about 15 seconds to make sure I was really hearing it, which I was. I just turned back down the steps and waited around in the living room for my family to get home before I went back upstairs. I went in my room a few hours later and there was nothing out of the ordinary. I know it's not a very climatic story, but it's something I think about every now and then. I never told anyone about it because, why would I? But that was the first time something truly strange happened to me. I was putting my daughter to bed, and she was talking about her godmother. BC, we were reading a book that her godmother had gotten her. Her godmother died in 2019 of breast cancer. She was my very best friend, more like a sister, and she doted on my daughter. We are reminiscing about her, and my daughter's twinkle lights she has on her ceiling starts going off. They have multiple settings and they are on the rainbow setting. Not too weird. Maybe they have a short or something. I go to turn them off. They aren't plugged in. I figure it's my friend saying hi. She loved rainbows. I'm not superstitious, but she promised to stick around and haunt us. I find it comforting. Those lights still go off every now and then. I had a schnauzer that could hear a cat stalk across a Persian rug. The slightest noise could wake her from a slumber and set off her constant barking. She made a great tent companion while on backpacking trips. Bears, raccoons and skunks would all get fair warning if they came within range of our campsite. One morning we woke up from a night without interruptions in the backcountry of SW Colorado, and I found my tent's central guy line was no longer staked down by the aluminum stake that I had used, but instead by a piece of aspen branch that had been carved into what looked like a tiki statue. Nothing too ornate, but a snarling face with teeth had been carved from the bark, and it had obviously been heated in a fire to give it a brown color. My dog didn't make a sound and I apparently slept harder than I thought. I scrambled out of the tent and looked around the small alpine lake and saw no other campers nor any sign that people had been around. Cut my trip short and hauled us the 8 miles back to my car. Not a single other car in the lot at the trailhead. Well, not the scariest thing ever, but when I was 11 my family and I moved to another town because of my dad's job. We were only going to stay there for a year, and thankfully we were given a house in a closed community of about 20 houses made for army officials and their families. So one day my parents are out and they take my baby sister. My older sister is in a friend's house and I'm left alone with our dog for like 2 hours. I was playing in my room when I remember that the black socks for my Monday uniform, kind of like a suit you wear on Mondays, are drying in the backyard. I go there with my dog and utter out loud, I wish there was something to do, and not a moment later I hear some young voice say very clearly, then let's play. I turn around to see my normally hyperactive golden sitting looking at me like nothing has happened. I freak out immediately and ran upstairs to my parents' bedroom. I turn on the TV and hide under the covers until my family arrived. They saw me sweating, scared and paranoid at this point. They never figured out what happened but tried to make me feel better. Now the part that freaks me is that each of the houses in the community was surrounded by 3-meter tall cinder block walls. The place where my socks were was next to a wall separating from another house, one that had no children. The other house to the left was over 20 meters away and behind another wall, and the wall behind my house separated us from nothing but a steep hill. There was no one who could have said that, and to this day it freaks me out every time I think of it.